You may.
Oops. Hang on here, thank you. Dr. Peplau, for you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peplau. For the record, my name is Nicole Moss. I'd like to start first with your first opinion, I think that you offered, which is that marriage confers physical and psychological benefits on married individuals. And when you talk about married individuals in that context, you are, of course, referring to heterosexual individuals, of course?
That's correct.
And the reason that you're referring to heterosexual individuals is because you don't have the data on same-sex individuals for the most part in this country, isn't that right?
On married same-sex couples, that's correct.
Exactly. And so so there have been no empirical studies that have been done apart from this one survey that you mentioned in Massachusetts on whether same-sex marriage would confer the same physical and psychological benefits that you talked about today and in your report.
My opinion is based on many things. It's based on research on heterosexual couples, which I believe is relevant. It's based on research on same-sex couples showing similarity. So it's really based on that evidence, that empirical research, and theories and explanations about why those patterns exist. So it's based on those. And then it's also informed by this one piece of information that you referred to.
So I'm sorry, I lost my thread here. So similarly, as far as you're aware, there have been no studies, empirical studies done on domestic, comparing whether there are physical or psychological benefits from domestic partnerships compared to same-sex marriage, isn't that right?
Studies comparing individuals in same-sex domestic partnerships and in same-sex marriages.
To see if there would be a difference between the two. We don't know that either, do we?
I think we have many reasons to estimate what we would find, but no, there have not been studies of that.
And you would agree, as a researcher with 35 years of experience, that it would be important for us to study same-sex marriage and whether there are, in fact, physical and psychological benefits that you hypothesize would exist.
As a researcher, I would always encourage us to do more research on topics that I think are important and interesting. And this is no different.
Now, domestic partnerships, to some degree or another, or civil unions, do exist in this country, isn't that right?
Correct.
But yet, there's been relatively little to no studies done on whether there are physical or psychological health benefits from domestic partnerships. Isn't that right?
That's right. And I think the reason for that is that most of the studies on health benefits rely on a very large national samples using government statistics. And we currently do not have government statistics of that sort on registered partners.
And some of the benefits for marriage that you've seen with heterosexual couples, and you listed several of them, and I won't go over them right now, but you can't rank or assess which particular aspect of marriage has caused the observed increase in better physical or psychological health. Isn't that right?
I've outlined a number of factors, and I think they often work together and work simultaneously. So I wouldn't be able to answer the question. Is there one that is of greater importance than the other? I think that, in truth, that would vary from one couple to another, depending on their life circumstances, and that's not an activity that researchers have tried to undertake.
And some of the attributes or aspects of marriage that researchers have opined may have a benefit, may be the cause of the physical benefit of marriage. One of those is access to health insurance through one's spouse. Is that right?
Yes.
And so, to the extent that access to health insurance would be afforded through domestic partnerships, would you expect to see benefits from domestic partnerships?
Yes. I think there's no question that domestic partnerships that have been an improvement for same-sex couples, that they do confer certain benefits. It's my opinion that they are not equivalent to marriage for a variety of reasons, and that they do not confer all the benefits of marriage. But I certainly would not dispute the idea that there are certain many good things that go along with registered partnerships.
And to the extent that, in your view, they do not confer all of the benefits of marriage, you can't say with certainty that those aspects that they don't confer are what is responsible for the increased levels of physical and psychological health that you've observed in married couples. Isn't that right?
I have great confidence that some of the things that come from marriage, believing that you're part of the first class, that you're part of a first class kind of relationship in this country, that you are in the status of relationships that this society most values, most esteems, considers the most legitimate and the most appropriate, undoubtedly has benefits that are not part of domestic partnerships.
But again, you have no empirical studies that you can point us to support that opinion, that measured specifically whether there were benefits conferred by domestic partnerships separately from or different from same-sex marriage. Is that right?
I really believe that we know a lot about the impact that stigma and being second class have on people and have on relationships. And it seems to me that being prevented by the government from being married is no different than other kinds of stigma and discrimination that have been studied in terms of their impact on relationships.
Now, you've talked about the protective effect of marriage, correct? And in your expert report, you testified or wrote that one of the protective benefits of marriage is the fact that it's a legal contract. Isn't that right?
I would certainly agree with that statement.
Okay. Okay, and a legal contract that affords sort of a second layer in that it's an enforceable legal contract, isn't that right? That in addition to just being a legal contract, it's one that spouses could enforce in court if need be?
I think that isn't exactly what I said. I think I referred to a phrase used by sociologist Andrew Sherlin, who suggested that one of the things that distinguishes marriage is that it is associated with enforceable trust. That in many kinds of relationships, partners can pledge all sorts of things. I swear I'll be married to you forever and ever. And that one of the benefits of marriage is that it enhances the likelihood that that trust or those commitments will, in fact, be acted upon and be enforceable. I don't think the argument is solely about a legal contract. I think it goes beyond that, that people associate with marriage a degree of seriousness and a sort of gravitas that leads them to take those obligations seriously.
And you have no basis to dispute that many individuals who are in registered domestic partnerships view their commitments seriously and with the same level of commitment that you would observe in married couples.
One of the remarkable things about couples is that they are very resilient and that people manage to form high-quality, satisfying relationships under a variety of adverse circumstances. And certainly many lesbians and gay men without the benefit either of domestic partnerships or of marriage have formed strong, lasting relationships. At the same time, it seems obvious to me that those relationships might be further enhanced and further stabilized and legitimated and validated by having access to marriage.
Now, one of the benefits of marriage, or one of the attributes of marriage that you, I believe, testified confers the benefits of marriage that you talked about is I think one of the terms is called barriers to exit. And the fact that it makes it more difficult for a couple to just split up lends stability to the relationship. Is that accurate?
Yes, there's a lot of literature and theories about the fact that couples stay together not only because they are attracted to each other and want to be together, but also because it might be difficult to get out. That there are various barriers, yes.
And would you agree that domestic partnerships or civil unions also create barriers to exit in a relationship?
Civil unions, without question, provide some kind of barriers. They're not equivalent to marriage. Because part of what goes on when you get married is that all of a sudden your relatives know about it. Your family is involved. People understand you have a new status. Oh, Anne got married. That's different than when you fill out a form and send it in, or however you go about it in your state, to become a registered partner. It's kind of like a private contract. It's not something that is necessarily understood or recognized by other people in your environment. And they are an important part of the barrier concept. Your relatives saying, gee, don't throw in the towel on your marriage. Think twice, give it another try. And your pastor talking about it, saying, let's talk about it, don't split up.
Dr. Peplau, have you undertaken any studies to test what the public's perception of domestic partnerships as compared to marriage?
I've not conducted a study on that. I must say, as I've talked to people about domestic partnership, many of them kind of scratch their heads and say, I don't really know what it is. But no, I have not conducted a systematic study.
And you don't cite any in your bibliography or materials relied upon either. Is that correct?
That's right.
I believe she answered that's right.
All right. And one of the studies that you do rely on in your expert report is a study by Kimberly Balsam. Are you familiar with that study?
I haven't reviewed it for today, but yes, I certainly have read the study in the past.
Dr. Peplau, if you could turn to tab 3 of your binder. I'm going to direct your attention to the exhibit that's been marked PX, Plaintiff's Exhibit 1143.
Yes.
Is that the study by Kim Balsam that you relied upon in your expert report?
Yes, it's one of the studies that I relied upon.
And in this particular study, the researchers found that same-sex couples not in civil unions were more likely to have ended their relationships than same-sex civil unions or heterosexual married couples. Isn't that right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And in fact, the authorities characterized the data as showing a significant difference in the rates of relationship terminations, correct?
You know, as I say, I have not reviewed that. If you want to direct me to a place, I think that is probably correct.
Why don't you turn to page 112 in the study?
Okay.
Very bottom of the first column. Isn't it correct, then, that they found or stated that the data showed a significant difference in the rates of relationship terminations?
Yes.
Referring to individuals in these civil unions versus those who were not?
Yes, that's what it says.
Your Honor, I move PX 1143 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well, 1143 is admitted.
Now, Dr. Peplau, you focused quite a bit in your testimony on the ways in which gay and lesbian couples were similar to heterosexual couples, and I want to focus for a bit in ways in which they're different.
Sure.
I want to focus specifically on gay men for a moment. Would you agree that the practice of monogamy in gay male relationships is quite different from the practice of monogamy in married heterosexual or lesbian relationships?
What I would say is this: researchers who study sexual exclusivity or monogamy in relationships often ask two questions. One is, do you believe that monogamy is an important thing in your relationship? Or some version of that. And the second is, have you been monogamous or have you been sexually exclusive in your relationship? And one of the ways in which gay men's relationships differ on average, some of them do, not all of them, by any means, is that a higher percentage of gay men say that they do not value monogamy. It's not important in their relationship. They may have an agreement that their relationship does not need to be sexually exclusive. And correspondingly, somewhat more gay men than other groups report that they or their partner have had sex with someone else since their relationship began. So it's important to put it in that context, because we sometimes think of non-monogamy in terms of infidelity, breach of faith. But if a couple has an agreement, an understanding that sex with other people is acceptable, then acting on that agreement is not a breach of trust. And I think that that's why researchers have found that whereas monogamy is correlated with relationship satisfaction for heterosexuals and lesbians, that is, having monogamy is associated with being in a happy relationship, for gay men, There's no association between sexual exclusivity and the satisfaction of the relationship, because it's not one of the markers or the yardstick by which gay men are measuring their relationship.
That's not true of most married people, is it?
What's not true is most married people are very unhappy if their partner is unfaithful, and it detracts from quality. And the same is true for lesbian couples and for a sizable part of the gay male couples as well. Just the proportions are different.
Dr. Peplau, can you turn to tab 4 in your binder? I want to direct your attention to the exhibit that's been marked for identification as Defendant Intervenor's Exhibit DIX 1233.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you recognize this as a study that you conducted with David Blasband, as written up in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, entitled Sexual Exclusivity versus Openness in Gay Male Couples?
Yes, it's an article from 25 years ago, a real oldie.
And in that article on page 396, you wrote that available research indicates that sexual exclusivity might be the exception rather than the rule in most gay male relationships. Isn't that right?
That's what it says, yes.
And then on page 397, you write that for some time, the norms of many segments of the gay community have encouraged sexual openness rather than exclusivity, and have defined casual sexual affairs as a complement to a steady relationship. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you wrote it, so do you agree with that explanation for why gay male relationships that practice monogamy are the exception rather than the rule?
I began this by saying this is an oldie, okay? And I think a number of things are different now than when this article was written, and that we might find different things if we were to redo the study. One is that when this article was written, no one was talking or thinking about same-sex marriage. Gay relationships were much more secretive, much more closeted. It was really a different time. And I think that our understanding about the gay community and about same-sex relationships was less developed, less well-developed, that we've learned things over the past 25 years. So I'm not in any way retracting what I said. It's an accurate statement in this paper of what I found at that time. But I wasn't studying gay men who, for example, had chosen to get married. So what we're talking about really is whether statements like this is true of the majority of gay men would still be accurate, for instance, of gay men who chose to get married.
Well, before I move on to a more recent article from you, first, Your Honor, I would like to move this exhibit into evidence, DIX 1233.
Hearing no objection, 1233 is admitted.
Now, Dr. Peplau, turning to tab 6 in the binder, this is an exhibit that's been marked for identification as DIX 1236. Do you recognize this article?
Yes, it's a recent review paper I wrote.
1236?
Oh, 1236. Wait, I'm on the wrong paper. It's tab 5?
It's tab 6 in your binder. It's The Close Relationships of Lesbian and Gay Men, authored by you and Adam W. Fingerhut.
Oh, I have it as 1245.
1245 is what is marked on the exhibit. Is that incorrect?
No. Oh, I think it's the same article, but I probably have a different, the defendant's sticker. I apologize.
It is that article, yes?
It's Plaintiffs 1245.
No objection to Plaintiffs 1245.
1245 is admitted.
Now, in this more recent article that you wrote, you did a study of a certain number of gay men who were in relationships. Isn't that right?
This paper is not a report of empirical study I conducted. This paper is a literature review. So it's really a summary of the results of other people's research. And I sometimes cite my own research, but it's a review paper.
I see. My apologies for that. So on page 410 of this literature review, you reference I'm looking in the second column, about halfway down, you write about a study, and it indicates that 36% of gay men indicated that it was important to be sexually monogamous, compared with 71% of lesbians, 85% of heterosexual wives, and 75% of husbands. Do you see that?
I do see that. And that's a correct statement of that study, which was a study conducted in the late 1970s, early 80s.
And would you agree, however, that while we may not know the exact percentages today, that it's still a fact that more, or should I say less, gay men believe that sexual monogamy is important as compared to lesbian couples and heterosexual and wives and husbands in a heterosexual marriage?
Yes, I agree with both parts of your statement, that we may not really know or be able to pin down the specific percentages. But I think as a general statement that the percentage is higher, or that the percentage differs, is correct.
So going back to your study that you wrote on sexual exclusivity and the openness in gay male couples, in that particular study, you noted that there was, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a difference between valuing or saying you agreed with that gay men agreed with monogamy and then actually carrying through with it came to their behavior, that there was a difference between the two. Is that not right?
This was a way in which humans are similar once again, that there are heterosexuals who pledge to be monogamous and who are not, and the same is true of some gay men.
And in fact, in that study, you found that 74% of men whose relationships had always been quote unquote closed had nonetheless had sex with at least one other person. Is that not right?
It's probably been 2 decades since I've reviewed that paper, and so if you'd like me to look at a specific sentence or something, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure, page 407.
Okay, wait, let me get that. Okay, thank you.
Would you agree that is what you wrote?
Well, I'm not sure where on the page it is. I'm on page 407.
Okay, if you look at the very top of the first full paragraph, second sentence, it says, this is perhaps most obvious in our finding that 74% of men whose relationships had always been closed had nonetheless had sex with at least one other person.
I'm sorry, 407?
407, yes, Your Honor, and tab 4.
What we did in this study was to give participants a definition of a sexually open relationship in which sexual monogamy was not expected, and a sexually closed relationship in which it was expected. And then the statement that you were citing is an accurate depiction of what we, is what we found.
And by closed, you meant that means that the two partners in the relationship agreed that they would be sexually exclusive to one another. Is that right?
We meant that they had, what I'm a little vague on at this point is just exactly how we asked that question, but the questionnaire used these terms. I assume that what we are reporting here are men who indicated, yes, according to our definition, their relationship was open, or yes, it was closed. And then a question about, presumably, since the beginning of your relationship, have you ever had sex with another person in what might have been a long relationship or short relationship?
And if it helps, on page 399 of that study under questionnaire, it says how closed was defined. And as I read it, it says, we defined a closed relationship as one in which sexual fidelity is expected of both partners, and an open relationship in one in which both partners are free to engage in sexual encounters with other people.
Right.
Okay, now, back on page 407, about 3/4 of the way down, you also write your findings in that study that all men in relationships identified as having been closed and lasting 3 years or longer had engaged in sex with at least one other person other than their primary partner. Isn't that right?
That's right. And the context of this, of course, is that this is a study of gay men in Los Angeles and in other time periods, not a representative sample of everybody. So I certainly don't want to deny my findings, but I think it's important to kind of have the context in mind for when and where and how these data were collected.
Now, Dr. Peplau, turning your attention for a moment to your testimony on the desire of gays and lesbians to marry as compared to, well, as compared to the heterosexual community, you noted that 74% of lesbians and gay men said that if they could legally marry someone of the same sex, they would do so someday, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to turn to tab 7 in your binder. Let me explain this exhibit a little bit to you. There's actually included behind this tab 2 separate exhibits. One is marked DIX 2427 and the other is marked DIX 2427A. And what the A is, this is our statistics from an official website, government website in Belgium. The official website is in French, so we had the website translated into English so that it would be more readable. And the certified translation is 2427A. Your Honor, since these are official records, government records from an official government website, we would move them in evidence as self-authenticating.
Could I ask one clarification? That if 2427A is disclosed on the exhibit list?
I believe it was disclosed on the exhibit list that was just recently filed.
Recently, within the last couple of days?
Last couple of days.
If I could, then conditionally, if we could, Your Honor, so I could verify that fact.
All right, fine. Then subject to that limitation, 2427, 2427A are admitted.
Dr. Peplau, if you could turn also to tab 8 in your binder, I have a similar exhibit, which is DIX 2644, which is another set of statistical charts from Belgium, and then 2644A being the certified English translation. And we would also move both of these exhibits into evidence.
Subject to the same reservation, we have no objection.
Very well, the same ruling.
Okay. Now, I'm going to have you flip between these two tabs, so if you could just keep them both at hand. And let's refer to the English translations, if you would. What I would like to do is walk with me through determining, based on these statistics, what the relative different percentages of the population in Belgium, the heterosexual population that gets married, versus the same-sex population, or should I say same-sex couples or gay or lesbian population that gets married.
I'm happy to do that, but I do want to emphasize that my research and the scope of my expertise is about relationships in the United States, and I am in no way, shape, or form knowledgeable or expert about marriage in Europe or anywhere else in the world. And as a researcher, in order to be able to comment, I can read these statistics, but to be able to comment on them or interpret them plausibly, I would feel unqualified to do that because I don't know anything about the context in Belgium, but I'm happy to go with you and read the numbers.
Understood. And so in offering your expert testimony today, you did not do any study of the other countries in the world where same-sex marriage has, in fact, been available to individuals for a number of years.
That's correct.
Now, if you look at tab 72427A, you see at the very bottom of this chart, the first row has years. Do you see that? 1990, 1995, going all the way up to 2008?
Yes.
Okay. And right under that, there is the line that contains the total population for the country of Belgium.
Yes.
And so you would agree that what this is representing is that in 2008, the population of the country of Belgium was 10,666,866.
Yes,
Okay. And then it's further broken down by how many individuals in that population were single, married, divorced, and widowed. Do you see that?
I do see it.
So the total number of married individuals in 2008 in Belgium was 4,509,478.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Peplau, there are no statistics that we could find that would, from the government in Belgium, that would indicate how many gay and lesbians there were in the population of that country. Now, would you agree that a good conservative estimate would be 2%?
I think that would,
Your Honor, beyond the scope, the witness has testified that she's not studied other countries at all.
Well, the witness has stated that she doesn't have expertise in marriage outside the United States. Obviously, the numbers are what the numbers are.
Certainly.
I will let you explore this, and we will see where we're going to go with it.
Do you have an estimate of what the percentage would be of the population in the United States that's gay and lesbian?
the estimate that I would use would be something like 2 to 3% who identify as gay or lesbian. So who on a survey, if you said, what is your sexual orientation, would check a box that said homosexual or gay or lesbian.
And from what you know of your study of sexual orientation, is there any reason to believe that there would be a remarkably different percentages outside of the United States?
There might well be that is the extent people's willingness to disclose, and in this case it looks like in a government document their sexual orientation might well vary from country to country. So I really don't know. I don't know.
So it could be more than 2%?
Could be more, it could be less.
It could be less. And so if we just take as a conservative evidence from the point of this hypothesis 2%, would that be, I mean, could we work with that? Would you agree that that seems reasonable?
If we assume that the percent is the same in Belgium that it might be in the United States, my guesstimate for the United States would be that, you know, something like 2%.
Okay, and Dr. Peplau, I'm not offering this as evidence that it's 2%. I don't know either. I'm just asking you to assume an estimate.
Ms. Moss is asking you to base your testimony on a hypothetical, all right?
So, if 2% of the population in Belgium were gay or lesbian, then, as I do the math, 2% would mean that there are 213,337 individuals in that country. And I don't expect you to do the math right here, but I represent to you that I have done the math. I have done it, and that's the number. So does that sound reasonable to you?
Fine.
Okay. Now, because we don't know this, whether when they're accounting for married individuals, whether that includes same-sex marriage or not in the total figure, but assuming it does, if we separate out, I'm sorry, strike that, I've gotten a little ahead of myself. Actually, I need you to turn to DIX 2644.
Yes.
Okay, and this is the chart from the Belgian government website that actually lists the number of heterosexual marriages by individual for each year.
That doesn't correspond to, wait, which am I turning to?
2644A behind tab 8.
The title says Trend in Homosexual Marriages.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say heterosexual marriages?
Yes.
I apologize. I meant homosexual marriages.
Then I'm with you.
I apologize for that. And as you'll see, it breaks it down by men, women, and then there's a total on the far right-hand side.
Yes.
And it's broken down by year. So, in 2004, it reports that there are 2,138 individuals who are in same-sex marriage. Do you see that?
I do. What I'm not clear about is that the number of people who got married that year, or who reported that they were married?
I believe it's the number of married individuals as identified by the state as being married by the government of Belgium. as being married.
So there were fewer married homosexual couples in 2008 than there were in 2007. So there were 2,300 in 2007, but there were only 2,100 in 2008?
No, it's the total number that, I'm sorry. It's the total number that year who got married that year.
But it's individuals as opposed to marriages.
If you look right above, it says the marital status notices do not yet distinguish between homosexual and heterosexual marriages. The National Registry, therefore, provides statistics about the number of people married and not the number of marriages.
I see.
So these are individuals who got married that year.
So that number is twice as large as the number of marriages?
Yes.
All right.
And so, if you wanted to know how many individuals at the end of 2008 were, in fact, heterosexual or homosexuals were married at the end of 2008, you would have to add up 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008.
Okay, got it.
And in doing that, it comes up with a total number of 10,923. And again, I don't expect you to do the math in your head, but that would be 10,923 individuals who are married. And this would overestimate potentially the number of marriages because, of course, it's not taking into account deaths or divorce or anything else. Wouldn't you agree? If I'm representing to you that it's just the number that's reported being married. I'm not asking you to assume any got divorced or died.
Right.
And based on those assumptions, it could possibly be an overrepresentation, okay? Now, if you take the total number of married individuals that are reported in Belgium, which we looked at earlier in DX 2427, and then you subtract out the total number of same-sex married individuals, you would agree that would give us the number of that would give us the number of opposite-sex marriages.
I believe so, yes.
And then, would you agree that to determine what percentage of gay and lesbian population are married, that you would divide the number in the population of gay and lesbian individuals into the number of gays and lesbians who are married to come up with a percentage?
I'm just puzzled about one thing here that maybe you can help me with because, you know, you can do the math better than I can. But I thought we said that on the first table that in 2008 there were 10 million marriages total. Mm-hmm. But the table for the homosexual marriages is the number per year. Am I right about that?
10 million was the population, the total.
I mean, the number of married people is 45 or 4,500,000 whatever and change.
Correct.
And that's the overall. Everybody married in Belgium.
Correct.
And then you're suggesting that it's about 10,000 same-sex marriages. No, couples.
No, 10,000 individuals.
That would be 5,000 couples.
Yes.
But if we just want to know on...
But if we just want to know on an individual basis what the percentage of gay and straight individuals in Belgium who are in same-sex marriages. If you divide the number of individuals who are gay and lesbian that report being married into, so if you basically divide that by the total population of gays and lesbians, you come up with approximately 5%?
Your Honor, may I object? Dr. Peplau is not an economist, and she's not a demographer, and she has not studied Belgium, so I don't know what purpose or usefulness this is to her.
Maybe it would be helpful, Ms. Moss, if you could just ask the bottom line question.
Assuming my math is correct, as I understand, as you sit there, you're not going to be able to do it all. I'm not able to do it in my head, and I assume that you can't do it in your head. But if the bottom line, if the numbers show that 5% of gay and lesbian individuals have taken advantage of same-sex marriage in Belgium, and 43% of heterosexuals have taken advantage of marriage in Belgium, there would be a significant difference between the two. Would there not?
Absolutely.
And without taking you through the same process, the same process, we also have data for the Netherlands.
Can I just make sure I'm with you on these data?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not saying that only 5% of all homosexuals in Belgium got married. Rather, because we don't know how many homosexuals there are. Rather, what you're saying is, of all married individuals in Belgium, only 5% of them are homosexual?
No. I'm saying that 5% of homosexuals in Belgium got married.
And how is it that we know the number of homosexuals in Belgium?
I asked you to assume a conservative estimate that 2% of the population was gay and lesbian.
Oh, I see. Okay. It's more complicated than that. So what you believe the facts of the data are that 5% of homosexuals in Belgium are married?
Yes.
Compared to 47%, I believe it was, of
43%.
43% of heterosexuals. Okay?
Now, Dr. Peplau, you would agree that there is a significant difference in the percentage, assuming this hypothetical that these facts are correct and that the math is correct, you would agree that there is a significant difference then in the percentage of population that is choosing to take advantage of the institution of marriage in that country.
Yes, and I would be struck by the fact that these data seem to be so different from analysis of the percent of same-sex couples in Massachusetts who have chosen to get married. And since I don't know anything about Belgium, one thing I might speculate about is that Americans are one of the most pro-family people around. I mean, Americans are enthusiasts of marriage. And so the rates may be lower in Europe, and I don't have any explanation for why or ability to speculate.
Now, if you would turn to tab 9 in your binder.
Sure.
This is an exhibit that's been marked DIX 2430. Your Honor, I would represent, these are statistics from the government of Netherlands, and Netherlands very nicely put their statistics up in English, so I did not have to have it translated. I would move these in evidence again as self-authenticating government record.
No objection to the document, Your Honor.
2430 is admitted.
Tab 10 is some additional statistics from the government of Netherlands. This has been marked for identification as DIX 1887. These are statistics, again, on the number of marriages, same-sex marriages, and then same-sex marriages by year broken down in a table through 2008.
Okay.
And Dr. Peplau, without taking you through the math again, if we were to go through that same exercise with the same set of assumptions in this hypothetical that there were 2% in the population in the Netherlands were gay and lesbian, and doing the math, if in doing that we were to find that 8% of the population of gay and lesbian couples or gay and lesbian individuals, I should say, in the Netherlands are married versus 42% of heterosexual individuals, again, that would be a significant difference in who is taking advantage of the institution, correct?
It would be a fairly substantial difference, but what I would have no way to understand or explain or think about what it's telling us.
Dr. Peplau, do you agree that one of the purposes of marriage, both historically and today, is to increase the likelihood that children will not be born out of wedlock?
By definition.
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat? I mean, I thought you said one of the purposes of marriage was to ensure that children weren't born out of wedlock. meaning outside of marriage.
Yes. Is that one of the purposes? So that children are born from sexual relations of men and women are born within the institution of marriage as opposed to outside of it.
Your Honor, I would object as to beyond the scope as to the purposes of marriage for Dr. Peplau's testimony.
Where are we going with this, Ms.
Well,
Moss?
She has testified that gay and lesbians are similarly situated to heterosexuals, and I'm simply going to ask her, if in fact they are similarly situated with respect to accidentally having children or having children out of wedlock unintentionally.
All right, why don't you ask her that question?
Would you agree that gay and lesbian couples do not accidentally have children?
I would really just comment two things about that. One is that, except in places like Massachusetts, all children born to lesbians or gay men or raised by lesbians or gay men are out of wedlock because the government doesn't permit their parents to marry. But if your question is, can two lesbians spontaneously, accidentally impregnate each other? Not to my knowledge.
It has to be planned. It has to be an intentional birth, isn't that right?
I believe that's correct.
And so, for that specific purpose or that specific reason, gay and lesbian couples are not fungible with heterosexual couples. Wouldn't you agree?
Fungible is a funny term to use, but I would agree that same-sex couples do not have accidental pregnancies.
Dr. Peplau, I'm going to ask you to turn to tab 11 in your binder, if you would. And this is the exhibit marked DIX1230.
Yes?
Do you recognize this?
Yes, this is a book review that I wrote of a book by Esther Rothblum, an edited book. Yeah.
The book entitled Boston Marriages, Romantic but Asexual Relationships Among Contemporary Lesbians. Is that right?
That was the title of the book, yes.
And in your book review, you wrote that a growing body of research suggests asexual lesbian relationships are not uncommon. Isn't that right?
I would agree with that. I don't know if I would... I agree with the statement that we have documented examples of lesbian relationships that are not characterized by what the general public thinks of as asexuality, but that is sort of genital sexual activities. And elsewhere, I have written about the fact that sometimes we use definitions or criteria for sexuality that are based on male sexuality, kind of assuming if there isn't a penis involved or genital contact of some sort that it's not a sexual activity. And one of the things that some lesbians report is that other kinds of activities that might have a sexual component, such as cuddling or kissing, are things that they value, but that genital sex may not necessarily be a part of their relationship.
Your Honor, I would move DIX1230 into evidence.
No objection.
1230 is in.
Dr. Peplau, you are not representing yourself here today as an expert in the social meaning of marriage, are you?
That's correct.
And
I think. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the social meaning.
well, I'm referring to how the public views marriage.
Well, I have cited data, for example, from the Gallup poll saying that a very large number of Americans either are married or tell you that they are planning to get married at some point. So in that sense, yes. But I'm not a sociologist, and I have not, conducted studies in which I have tried to assess the attitudes of Americans about the many different aspects of marriage. Although, the more we talk about it, the more it really kind of depends. I have done studies on people's attitudes about the division of labor in marriage and things like that, but if by social meaning you mean the sorts of things sociologists might do, I am not, by training, a sociologist.
And you have offered various opinions on how you think the public views marriage and understands marriage, but you have not conducted any polls or any research in that specific topic, have you?
No. I've relied on other sources of empirical data and theory about it, and the Gallup poll is just one source of things that I relied on.
So we have already established that you have not done you have not done research into the relative benefits of domestic partnerships as compared to either same-sex marriage or heterosexual marriage, correct?
I have not done that empirical research, no.
And the only empirical research study that you have pointed to regarding the beneficial effects of marriage on some same-sex couples is the Massachusetts survey that you referenced.
Yes. I've drawn conclusions, of course, based on a much broader set of literatures on same-sex couples and on heterosexual couples and theories and so on. But I'm really drawing on, you know, a great knowledge base. But in terms of studies specifically of the effects of same-sex civil marriage, I have relied on the Ramus et al. Study.
So let's talk about that for a little bit, about that study.
Sure.
I believe you said on direct that you recognize that it's not a representative, that it did not come from a representative sample. Is that right?
Correct.
And by that, what do you mean when you say that it's not a representative sample?
Well, a representative sample would mean that it was reflective of the entire population. So if we wanted a representative sample of couples, we would typically try to find a way to access a list of all possible couples in a certain category, and then to sample every fifth one of them or so. It would be a representative sample. This was a volunteer sample of people who were contacted and chose to reply. And the researchers themselves acknowledge it, and I acknowledge it. And so it really is telling us about the opinions of 550 or thereabouts people who got married in Massachusetts. And there may be different opinions or similar opinions among the rest of the people who did not get informed about the survey or who chose not to answer.
And in fact, we know a little bit about how they came up with the sample for this survey, correct? I mean, we know, for instance, that this particular survey was recruited through a large gay rights advocacy group in Massachusetts?
Yes. My understanding is that this survey was done online, and that it was an internet survey. And they went to a group that had a large email list, and they assumed that among that large email list there would be some individuals or couples who had gotten married. And that was the way the Department of Health of the state of Massachusetts chose to collect information.
And so it was individuals who responded, individuals from this email list of this gay rights advocacy group who responded and who self-identified as being in a marriage, that were sent the survey, and that the data was gathered from those, from their survey responses, correct?
Correct.
And we know from the survey responses that these volunteer sample members who responded, that 40% of them listed as one of the top 3 reasons why they got married was having society know about gay and lesbian relationships, correct?
I'm not sure that was the wording. I thought the wording was about legal recognition, but it's been a while since I looked at that specifically. You may be more up to date on this than I am.
Well, if you return to tab 12 in your binder.
Yes.
And this is the Williams Institute survey. I believe it's already been admitted into evidence on your direct.
Yes.
If you look at page 5,
Mm-hmm.
the authors of the survey say that, and I'm looking at the second full paragraph in the left-hand column, second sentence. It says, 4 in 10 reported wanting to have society know about gay and lesbian relationships.
I see. It's the societal visibility that you're talking about.
Exactly. And then in the chart next to it, it says represents 40% of represents 40% of societal visibility to gay and lesbian relationships.
Okay.
So that was one of the top 3 reasons for why they got married. A 40% of the respondents of the survey. You would agree with that, right?
I would note that they were asked multiple reasons, and the first reason that was given by virtually almost everybody, 95%, was love and commitment. And the second was legal recognition of their relationship. And then they give other answers. And you're quite right that 40% of this unrepresentative sample said that social visibility was one of the reasons for them.
And some of the ways in which the sample was not representative is that it was 90% white.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes. I don't actually know what the demographic characteristics of lesbians and gay men in Massachusetts are. That is, I don't know what percentage of lesbians and gay men are in fact white or not white in the state. So
Or in the United States?
In the United States. It's certainly not, United States is not 90% white.
And the average age of the individuals who responded was 48 years old. Is that right?
Right. And again, I don't know what to make out of that. I mean, that was what they found, right?
And that average age is significantly higher than the average age of most same-sex couples in the United States. Isn't that right?
I'm trying to, there may be data from the census about what the average age of same-sex couples is in the United States, but I don't know what those data are. I really don't know how to make the comparison that you're driving at about, was this sample relatively older than the gay and lesbian population of Massachusetts or not? I don't know the answer to that.
Now, we also know from the survey results that 85% of the respondents had at least college-level education, and 57% of the respondents had graduate-level education. Isn't that right?
Right. And those levels are high. Lesbians and gay men on average have higher levels of education than the general public, but I think these are probably higher.
And we also know that 52% of the survey respondents earned a combined household income of more than $110,000. Isn't that right?
And when we say a sample is not representative, part of what we mean is that it differs, or it might differ. It has the potential for differing from a fully representative sample of the United States. And that's really why when I talked about these data, and I hope I was very clear about this, I was not trying to generalize that these would be the experiences of every lesbian or gay man who got married in Massachusetts, but rather that this tells us about the experience of some citizens of Massachusetts who were married. I think that's what you can claim I think that's what you can say based on this study.
And Dr. Peplau, in terms of how the survey was conducted, it was based on self-reporting by individuals, correct?
Survey studies are self-report studies.
By nature?
It means you ask a person a question and they answer, and this is no different.
And like all surveys then, they are open to self-reporting bias, correct?
Well, we trust that people tell us, honest answers, but they are telling us. We are taking them at their word, and that's kind of the nature of doing this kind of research.
And we don't know from the face of this document what, if anything, was done to control for possible self-reporting biases with this survey, do we?
I don't believe they discuss that issue in this report.
And so to the extent that it may be more representative of individuals who are happy with their marriage than the average, we have no way to do that, do we?
No. In general, relationships researchers have worried about this question, about if we ask for volunteer samples for a study, are we more likely to get happy couples who want to brag about their relationship, or miserable couples who want to complain about their partner? It really seems very plausible that you can get both. And in this case, we really don't know. We really don't.
But we do know that the recruitment came through a gay advocacy organization, correct?
Correct.
And we do know that 40% of the respondents to the survey identified as one of the top 3 reasons they got married, having their relationship more visible. Gay and lesbian relationships be more visible, correct?
Right. So, so the debate about same-sex marriage is something that is widely talked about in this country and in gay communities. And so it wouldn't surprise me that in a state that, one of the first states to permit same-sex marriage, that it would occur to same-sex couples, particularly those who are more socially engaged or active, that part of what they were doing was participating in a private activity that was going to be known to other people. So it doesn't particularly surprise me that they might have given that answer, given the social climate of the times and the novelty of marriage for same-sex couples in Massachusetts.
And so those facts tell us about something about the individuals that chose to respond to the survey, or that they may tell us something about the individuals that chose to respond to the survey, correct?
They tell us about the experiences reported by the people who took the survey, yeah.
Now, Dr. Peplau, on direct and in your expert report, you have offered the opinion that, in your view, allowing same-sex marriage will not harm heterosexual marriage? And you specifically focused on whether it will cause increased divorce rates. Isn't that right?
That was one of the things I talked about, yes.
You have not offered opinions or undertaken extensive analysis about whether or not it might harm the institution of marriage separate and apart from individual heterosexual relationships. Isn't that right?
The issues I have been centrally interested in are entry into marriage and exiting from marriage through divorce or dissolution. I think those issues speak in very important ways to the institution of marriage and its health and how robust it is. But there are certainly other aspects of the institution of marriage that I do not address in my expert statement, and that's true.
Now, Dr. Peplau, I want to direct your attention for a moment to the statement you make on page 11 of your expert report, and you can find that behind tab 1 in your binder.
Okay. It's page 11, you said?
In page 11 of your expert report, and it's tab 1.
Okay.
Specifically, I'm looking at the second paragraph under the heading, the A heading. About halfway down, you write, public acceptance of divorce has increased as the social acceptability of unmarried cohabitation. Some scholars also suggest that a growing emphasis on individualism and personal fulfillment has eroded an earlier emphasis on the importance of obligation and commitment in marriage. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And another reason you cite that contributes to the current divorce rates is that state no-fault divorce laws make it easier for spouses to end their relationships, correct?
What I was talking about here was analyses that family researchers and historians and sociologists and others have done to try to understand factors that led to an increase in a dramatic increase in the 20th century in the divorce rate in the U.S. A divorce rate that peaked in the 80s and has kind of leveled off or decreased since then. So this is really an analysis of factors during a reasonably long period that contributed to a fairly high divorce rate in the United States.
And those factors include a growing emphasis on individualism and personal fulfillment?
That's one of the factors that's been suggested by scholars who have studied this. And part of what they have suggested is that in earlier times, when a more important part of marriage might have been a marriage as an economic unit in which two persons came together as a way sort of to meet the basic needs for survival, that over time we have come to expect personal fulfillment through marriage. That marriage is not the only place where our laundry is done, is not only a place where our laundry is done and someone pays the bills, but marriage is also a place where we develop our personal potential and so on. Mm-hmm. And it's been suggested that this increasing emphasis among some individuals is what's been called individualism, has in some ways set very high expectations for marriage. That now that it's not enough for a married partner to treat you well and be kind and thoughtful, but you have to also be able to develop a relationship in which you find your soulmate and which, so the suggestion has been that shifting American values about individualism may have been one of the factors that contribute. And the reason I talked about these factors was because none of these factors is linked or is due to the gay civil rights movement. That was really the point I was making. One of the points I was trying to make was that the increase in the divorce rate was independent of the push for marriage equality for same-sex couples.
Now, looking at, turning to page 13 of your expert report, where you have a chart that I think lists or sets forth the divorce statistics in Massachusetts that you spoke of on direct, you have 4 years of data worth, 4 years worth of data listed, is that right?
The 4 years before same-sex marriage, and then the 4 years starting with...
And the 4 years after?
Yes.
And you would agree that this is not a tremendously large amount of data from which to draw conclusions, isn't that right?
It's a total of 8 years of data. You know, I don't know what large or small would mean in this capacity. It's only 4 years since marriage began, because those are the recent government statistics available.
And as we look at them in Massachusetts, we see that in 2004, of all the years listed, in 2004, there was the highest marriage rate, correct?
Correct.
6.5%?
Correct.
And then it went down in 2005 to 6.2%?
Yes.
And then it went down to 5.9% in 2006. It stayed at 5.9% in 2007, and we don't know for 2008 and 2009 based on the evidence that you have put forth. Isn't that right? Your reading of these numbers is quite correct. What I would comment about is that if you look at these kinds of data, not just in Massachusetts, but in other states, what you see is that there are always year-to-year minor fluctuations. And so that's why when I looked at these data, my interpretation of them is really an interpretation of no change. Because the fact that the rate goes up 2%, 0.2% one year, or down, you know, a small fraction of a percent the next, I think is kind of haphazard variation in the years preceding the introduction of same-sex marriage. So, I mean, I don't take these as necessarily serious indicators of anything. To me, well, what stands out to me is, aside from what looks like the impact of gay people getting married the first year, increasing that number, the numbers just kind of look the same to me. Have you undertaken a comprehensive analysis of marriage and divorce rates in the neighboring states to Massachusetts?
No, I have not.
How about nationally? Have you done a comprehensive analysis of what the divorce rates during this time frame were nationally either? Or have you?
No. No, the only point I was trying to make here was that Massachusetts is a state that permits civil same-sex marriage, and that it would be informative to look at that in that state, what the patterns were leading up to, prior to same-sex marriage, and following. I don't make any claims beyond that about what these data show.
And looking for just a moment at the divorce rate starting in 2004, the same year that same-sex marriage was allowed in Massachusetts, the data, as you present it, 2.2% in 2004, 2.2% in 2005, 2.3% in 2006, and 2.3% in 2007. So going up slightly in 2006, 2007, correct?
And still winding up lower than they had been in the 4 years preceding the introduction of same-sex marriage. So, I mean, we can try to make something out of a difference between 0.3 and, 2.3 and 2.4. But I think, given the fact that these numbers bounce around a little bit in all states across the years, that I was certainly not claiming that the divorce rate went down as a result of same-sex marriage. But if we want to look at minor variations in divorce, the average divorce rate is lower after same-sex marriage than before, but I interpret it really as the same.
And again, I don't know if it shows a pattern or not either. We have 4 years, and you would agree you have got 4 years, including the year when same-sex marriage was allowed in Massachusetts, and we have that year through 2007, and that's the data that we have?
Correct.
And you would agree that it would be helpful to have several more additional years worth of data to be able to draw conclusions one way or another, wouldn't you?
Oh, I'm sure we will have that data soon.
I'm sure we will. And just to finish up, Dr. Peplau, as to whether same-sex marriage will have any effect on public attitudes towards individualism or commitments over time, you can only speculate on that issue because you have not actually done any study of it. Isn't that right?
Well, the issue is, do I think that... I'm sorry. It may be late in the day. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Whether same-sex marriage will have any effect on public attitudes towards individualism and commitment over time is something you can only speculate about because you have not studied it and know of no studies. Isn't that right?
So the question is, do I think that permitting same-sex marriage might over time lead Americans to become more or less individualistic? Or do I think it might lead them to value commitment more or less over time? Is that the question?
Well, have you studied the issue? So, I mean, where can you offer an opinion on it?
My general opinion, my overarching opinion, is that same-sex marriage will not cause harm. And it's based on my consideration of a lot of research on marriage, on same-sex couples, on understanding of theories, and so on. And all of the evidence and the theories I know and can think of are on the side of saying no harm. And then on the side of what theory might there be about why there would be harm or what data might there be to suggest harm, there's nothing. So it's kind of like this. And so I have great confidence in that conclusion. But it is the case that that opinion of mine is not based on my having done empirical study over time or of same-sex marriage. Will it or won't it influence the public's attitudes about individualism or commitment?
Thank you. One moment.
Yes, Your Honor, very brief redirect. Dr. Peplau, Ms. Moss asked you some questions at the beginning of cross-examination about enforceable trust and whether there was enforceable trust in a domestic partnership. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Or do you have a view as to whether there is a degree of enforceable trust in marriage, more so than a domestic partnership?
I think it would be greater in marriage.
Ms. Moss also asked you about barriers to exit and whether there were barriers to exit in domestic partnership. Do you recall that?
I do.
Do you have an opinion as to whether there are greater barriers to exit from marriage than from domestic partnerships?
I believe there are greater barriers in marriage.
Ms. Moss asked you about a piece of work from 1985 that's at tab 4 of your binder, exhibit 1233, talking about exclusivity. Do you recall that?
Yes.
So that's something that was done 25 years ago.
Yes.
And 25 years ago, there was no marriage available for same-sex couples, correct?
Correct. Nor were there domestic partnerships.
So any information that you gleaned in that study had nothing to do with the behavior of couples in marriage, correct?
Correct.
And do you know, in California, is there any restriction on the ability of heterosexual couples, of a heterosexual couple that doesn't want to be exclusive to marry?
No, there's no restriction.
Okay, I'm a bit reluctant to take you back to Belgium, but I had one question. Actually, maybe two. Why don't we start with the U.S.? Why is it that you focused on the U.S. rather than on other countries?
We were talking about possible changes to the law in California and in the United States. And it seems to me that the most directly relevant information is what's happened in another state within our own country.
Okay, now, Ms. Moss asked you about, well, it was a hypothetical, but there were some figures drawn from data where she was suggesting that 43% of heterosexual couples in the country were married and 5% of same-sex couples were married. Do you have any idea in that hypothetical or that data whether the 43% of heterosexual couples included all the heterosexual couples that had been married in all that time that heterosexual marriage had been allowed?
My understanding, but I don't trust it, is that it was really the percent of individuals who are currently married.
And do you know how long opposite-sex marriage has been lawful in the Netherlands or in Belgium?
I assume for a long time.
Okay. Ms. Moss asked you some questions about a growing emphasis on individualism and personal fulfillment. And sometimes it's put in contrast to, let's say, a concern for child welfare. Has your study of relationships, Dr. Peplau, suggested in any way that same-sex couples have a greater emphasis on individualism and personal fulfillment than opposite-sex couples?
No.
Has your work suggested that same-sex couples have any less concern for the well-being of children they may be raising than opposite-sex couples?
No.
Okay, lastly, Ms. Moss asked you some questions about Massachusetts and the need for some more data. Do you feel that the need for more data from Massachusetts to form an opinion as to whether allowing same-sex couples to marry would either lead heterosexual couples not to marry or to exit from their marriage?
I don't. Because my opinion is based on much more than simply the Massachusetts data.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions for Dr. Peplau.
Very well. Dr. Peplau, you may step down. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We are, I think, ready to adjourn for today. We will recommence at 8:30 in the morning. Now, as you know, the Supreme Court has given us some guidance with respect to part of the issue, and it seems to be a rather limited guidance at the moment. So we may have issues beyond remote access to these proceedings by other courthouses that we'll have to take up at some point. My inclination, without hearing from counsel and getting their advice, is to put that issue to the side for the time being and proceed with the trial. We seem to be moving along, and I just don't want to do anything to alter the progress we're making in these proceedings, but we may indeed have to address these issues at some later time. So we will not have remote access to these proceedings from other courthouses. In the Ninth Circuit or elsewhere in the federal judiciary, we'll just have to deal with that issue in due time. Now, Mr. Cooper, I understand from the clerk that you asked about the responses to the proposed, to the change of the local rule and the responses with reference to broadcast or webcasting these proceedings. The ones that we received are all in the jury room, and I believe that you or your colleagues have had an opportunity to review them. Is that correct?
I do understand that they are in the jury room available for inspection. And I believe that some of my colleagues have taken advantage of that fact. I don't have a report for you in terms of whether that review is complete.
Well, there are quite a number. There are quite a number. And I can well imagine that maybe you or your colleagues have not had a chance to review them all. My understanding from the clerk is that someone on your team had requested to copy some of them.
You are better informed than I am.
I see. Well, maybe you could chat with your colleagues. My initial reaction is, and I'll be guided by whatever you advise, I'm inclined to think that we should either copy all or none or make all of them part of the record if that's necessary. But in view of the volume, I just really wonder what value it is for these proceedings to do all that.
Well, the court has put on the record the selection of the comments that the court has found relevant.
Those are for organizations. Those are for lawyer organizations. I put all of those on, but none of the individual comments.
Well, I frankly don't know what's in this. I haven't received a report. But if we do conclude that there is something in those comments that we would like to ask the court to put on the public record, we will try to make that determination promptly.
All right, that's fine. Anything further at the moment before we adjourn? Ms. Stewart?
Your Honor, if I might, I wanted to make sure that the excerpts from the TAM deposition that we played this morning did get in the record. I know that, or I'm told that they weren't actually transcribed, and so I know we didn't complete them, but insofar as we got partway through, I'd like to make sure those deposition excerpts are part of the record and the documents that were with them.
Well, it would help if you could at least supply the page, the line reference to those depositions so the reporter could note it in the record.
We will happily do that, Your Honor. I'll do that first thing in the morning because I need to check how far we got with my colleagues.
All right, if you could check on that. Mr. Cooper is checking with his colleague. Who is our first witness tomorrow?
Your Honor, that would be Ed Egan.
I beg your pardon?
Edmund A. Egan.
Mr. Egan.
Yes.
All right, and he will be followed by?
Dr. Elon Meyer.
All right, and I suppose you can get through three of these folks tomorrow at least?
Yeah, we believe we will, Your Honor.
Who's the third one, Mr. Boies?
The third one will be Ms. Zia, and we also have deposition designations in case we don't have. Well, we also have deposition designations in case we get through all three of those people. We actually hope that those three people will not take the whole day. We're trying to move as fast as we can.
Is Zia you mentioned?
Yes.
Good. Well, that would be good progress. We're moving right along, which is what we all want to do. All right, I look forward to seeing everybody.